Welcome everyone to the July 6th edition of Winesday. Tonight I'm joined with Thomas from Tryon Distributing, and we've got two cool French wines. One is called Saint Hilaire, which is a nice sparkling wine from the south of France, and the other is a rosé also from the south of France. Kind of co-op-y at some point in their history as well, so kind of all ties in together. Perfect for summer. We also have two cheeses tonight. One is called Walden. It's made from cow's milk out of Sequatchie Cove in Tennessee, similar to Revolution. So Revolution is a French cheese from the Savoie, so all the way on the east, kind of mountainy part near Switzerland. It tends to be a little funky and creamy. You make this dish called tartiflette, which is this like layered potato and cheese and onion dish that's insanely rich and super delicious. And you could use Walden instead of that. Both cheeses, both wines, I think are totally great tonight too. The other cheese we have is called Le Secret de Compostelle. It's a brebis, so sheep's milk from the Pyrenees, which is very close to where the sparkling wine is coming from tonight. If you've had Osurati before, if you've had Manchego before, it's kind of in that realm of being firm pressed, smooth, creamy. It's got a nice bit of like kind of caramelly notes to it, as well as that sheepiness. Sheep's milk comes out with really high fat content, so it's always just really nice and rich. And I think the notes we're going to get from the Saint Hilaire and the cheese, those kind of earthy things, are going to go really great together. So I look forward to hearing your reactions. Thomas, thanks again for joining, and I will pass it off to you. Cheers.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you guys for having me. It's nice to be back. The first wine we have this evening is Saint Hilaire Brut. This is a really cool story. So it is the oldest sparkling wine in the world, dating back to, so we have records of it being made in 1531. They probably were making it before then, but that's when we can say for sure that they were. That's still 100 years prior to sparkling wine and champagne. They did make wine and champagne earlier, but it wasn't until about the 16th, 17th century that they started making sparkling wine there. So the monks, the Benedictine monks at the Abbey of Saint Hilaire were the first documented folks to be making sparkling wine. And they make it in the same method that champagne is made. It's traditional method. They don't use as much lees aging. So you don't get that kind of bready yeastiness that you get from a champagne. You get more of a kind of fruit forward version of sparkling, not kind of all the way leaning towards Prosecco. It still has got some kind of nuances and some funkiness to it, but definitely not quite as yeasty and bready. So the main grape in it is Mauzac, which grows really well in kind of the hot climate in the south of France, right up, butting up to the Pyrenees, just as Zach mentioned. It's a grape that was widely grown for a while. They're kind of tamping it down a little bit and growing a little more Chenin Blanc and Chardonnay, which are the other two grapes that are in this, but it's 90% Mauzac and then 5% Chenin Blanc, 5% Chardonnay.
Thomas, go ahead and show the text sheet right now.
Okay,
as
perfect.
There we go. All right.
So there's 3 sparkling AOCs in Limoux. So you've got Blanquette de Limoux, which is the first one. And then as the winemakers in the region started to kind of lean more into the Chardonnay and the Chenin Blanc and kind of push back on the Mauzac a little bit, they started an AOC that's Crémant de Limoux. And that one does not require as much Mauzac. One of the reasons why the Blanquette de Limoux AOC requires so much Mauzac is because they wanted to keep it growing there. So if they make that rule, put that rule in place that to be called that, then you have to have that much of the grape in it, kind of like Chianti and Sangiovese. But even now they're kind of like the growers are pushing back a little bit, and they're growing a lot more Chenin Blanc and a lot more Chardonnay. But the Mauzac grape is really great for those hot climates. It kind of matures later and gets harvested later. And it expresses itself in different ways depending on whether you harvest it early or late. So you get a lot more fruitiness and residual sugar when you let it harvest longer and pick it later. A lot of the winemakers now are kind of leaning more towards picking it earlier, and you get like a different kind of fruit, a little bit more acidic, not quite as fruity and as sugary. But it is a fruit.
How kind of like green apple-y it is.
Yeah.
It's nice and tart. I think again, like with the cheeses that we were talking about earlier, or any other kind of thing, super food friendly. Like,
yeah, it definitely cuts a little bit of the creaminess of a cheese, like with a nice balance.
The pictures that I got on the screen right now are pictures of the Abbey of St. Hilaire. So again, Thomas, as you're talking, I'll just kind of scroll through some of these. I thought they were pretty neat. That these buildings have been around for, well, I think in the 11th century they started to be rebuilt after the Middle Ages and kind of destroyed everything in the area.
That sounds correct.
Old kind of building that we're looking at. I was reading a little bit too about the whole like the I guess the history or the legend of Dom Perignon stealing the idea for champagne from the Benedictine monks, and he just had better marketing skill, which is why we pay a little more for champagne than we would for this. But honestly, like flavor wise, it's pretty close. Like there's not a whole lot kind of keeping us separated from your traditional French champagne.
Yeah, and like the little differences are important as far as it being distinctive. Like
right.
If it all tasted the same, it wouldn't be as exciting.
Sure, for sure.
Yeah, but it's you mentioned like the marketing thing with Dom Perignon. It's fascinating to see some of these things that have happened over the years, especially in France, where something became the way it is because of basically marketing in the old world, like the way that a Bordeaux bottle is shaped differently than a Burgundy bottle. That was so that anyone that saw that bottle would know where it was from. It's just simple marketing. It's not, anything really fancy. It's just that it's been centuries, of time that they've been doing this. And so it seems like this, whatever, but really someone's like, I know how we can sell our wine better.
Hey, I'm always looking for that.
Those kind of things are fascinating for sure. So a kind of interesting nod. Thomas Jefferson was big into French wine and spent a lot of time over in France, and he discovered the sparkling wine of Limoux and really highlighted it, and probably was the first person to bring it back to the U.S. and introduce the U.S. market to that kind of sparkling wine. So
and that's 200 years after they started making it. So like that was
time to perfect it.
Right, exactly. That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's also Blanquette ancestral method from the same region where it's just a single fermentation in the bottle, not quite as fizzy and sparkling. But so that kind of rounds out the three different AOCs that they have in that region. But the Blanquette de Limoux was the first and the original.
Yeah, I think that was in the late 30s when that happened with the AOC. And as this is kind of warming up, I feel like, and it could just be my brain, I didn't look at the calendar today to see if it's a good wine tasting day or not. Of course it's not, but that's all right. I think it tastes good. I kind of smell the floral quality that I would associate with Chenin. The acidity is there from what I would consider from Chardonnay, and then that Malzac, just besides the fact that the last three letters are very well spelled. There's not, I don't really know how to place that. I've never had that grape as a still wine or a single varietal.
Yeah, I did some research to kind of see if it was a cross or a hybrid of something else that's more common, more familiar. And I think it's just an original grape from that region, as far as I could tell.
Yeah. And here's potentially some of those Malzac vines. It's really, really quite pretty. You see Pyrenees back here. That's kind of where that cheese that you're eating tonight is coming from. More pretty great pictures. Can't go wrong there.
Apparently there's very small amount of colored Malzac out there as well, but the primary grape that's grown is a white skinned.
Right. Yeah, and some of the things I was looking at, the fact that it is in the south of France and the Pyrenees kind of form this big wall, you get both influences of Mediterranean and Atlantic. and they're talking basically about how the winds preserve some of the acidity. The really hot sun helps ripen the fruit, and you just get this really, again, just super well balanced bubbly wine, and it's not offensive. And I think it would play both to the Cava Champagne people as well as the Prosecco people. It's that nice little kind of midway between the two.
Yeah, when you think about it, I mean, Cava is just kind of right over the other side of the Pyrenees, and Penedès, so it's really not too far off. You're getting like one's getting more northerly exposure, I guess.
Sure. All right. Quite tasty stuff for sure.
Super delicious. Very refreshing on a hot summer day. It was hot out there today.
Oh yeah. It was like 100 degrees, heat index of 109, I think. That's what I saw, and no signs of stopping anytime soon. As everybody's well aware, North Carolina summer lasts until about November. So hopefully it'll get back into a little more normal 80 temperatures versus 100 temperatures, but we just got to keep a bunch of cold wine around. I think everybody will be able.
Exactly. Stay inside and drink good wine.
Yeah, always. That doesn't matter the temperature, right?
No.
All right. Are there any questions about the bubbly wine we've got going on tonight? Silence is good, I guess.
It's a neat history, really good wine. It kind of speaks for itself.
It really does. And it's one of those labels that kind of hangs out on the shelf, but always has really great traction. And people, if you aren't sure what kind of bubbly you want to step out in a slightly different direction, but still be really safe and pretty much kind of surprised by quality, Saint Hilaire, Blanquette Limoux is the way to go.
Yeah.
Right.
Definitely champagne prices are pretty steep right now.
Yes. Yeah. And there are no signs of slowing, unfortunately.
Yeah.
That's been, or even sourcing it, which has been kind of difficult lately too, especially for some of the bigger names like Dom Perignon and Moet and all that kind of stuff. Super difficult to get, but you don't have to worry about it. You can save, $45 or whatever, or just spend the 45 and get like 4 bottles of this stuff.
Exactly.
So our second wine tonight is a personal old school favorite of mine. Is the Houchart Provence Rosé. Got it right here. When I think of Provence, this is where my mind almost always goes. I've been working with this wine for probably 7 years now, maybe longer. And one of the first big purchases I made was like 60 cases of Houchart when I was with Whole Foods, and I bought about, I think, a third or half of the entire state's allocation. So people were kind of mad, but we were really happy. We were flush with delicious rosé, and now we tone that back a little bit. There's another giant pile of rosé at the co-op right now, but this always hits like every single mark for me. And I'm really excited to try this. First time I've had 21, so I'm really looking forward to this first sip.
Yeah, so another winery with a very storied history. They're on their 13th generation. The name has changed a couple of times due to marriage, but it's always been the same family lineage. Currently, it is Florence and Jean Baptiste. They are the current owners, 13th generation. The family, yeah, that's crazy. The family originally started making wine in Châteauneuf-du-Pape back in 1748 and acquired some other properties throughout the years. The property where Houchart was acquired in 1890, and it's about 60 acres, and it's right at the foot of Mount Victoire, Saint Victoire, and only about 15 miles outside of Aix-en-Provence. And they make a white and a red and a rosé, and that's pretty much, and they do I think it's a single vineyard rosé as well, but they pretty much stick to their, very, small production there at that particular estate. The estate was originally most likely a villa from someone kind of high up in the Roman government many years ago. But over the years, in the 4th and 5th, 6th, and 10th centuries, it got due to invasions, it got ransacked, and property kind of felt a little derelict, and the forest kind of grew up into the vineyards and was just kind of a mess. But again, the monks, the local monks stepped in and saved the day. There's some monks from let's see, from the Abbey of Saint Victor de Marseille, and they kind of came and cleaned out and deforested and replanted the vines back in the 11th century. Still a long time before the Keogh family ended up purchasing property. But kind of cool that the monks just kind of tie into all the winemaking in France.
Yeah. I have a bottle of Benedictine, which I always thought was also made by Benedictine monks. Apparently, other good marketing, which is why I didn't show the bottle tonight. But it's a Normandy invention that this guy worked with, an alchemist, in kind of recreating what they thought, based on some historical medicinal recipes, what the flavor profile is. So if you do like really sweet liqueur, if you see Benedictine or B&B, you can grab one. Not made by Benedictine monks. Just the guy was like, oh, my grandfather was a monk, so I'll put Dom on the bottle and make it look like the monks were making it. Unlike chartreuse, which is still made by monks. But there's some liquor facts for you tonight. We won't do a liquor day because that would be just bad news, and you can't get it from co-op anyway. So,
the blend here is Grenache, Syrah, Cinsault, Mourvedre, and the oddball in the bunch is Cabernet Sauvignon, which you wouldn't really expect from that region, or in kind of blended in. You see very rarely do you see Cabernet in a rosé, but it's a fairly small amount, so just something kind of interesting there. But so the original founder of this particular estate was Arlien Houchart, and he was a wine merchant. And it kind of interestingly, he was childhood and school friends with Cezanne. So Cezanne used to come out to the property, the Houchart estate, and like hang out and just like and drink wine and paint, and
awesome.
He apparently was a staple there. He was there a lot.
Actually,
beautiful picture of the estate.
I might have it right there. There you go.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So there's a picture of Houchart, just 200 years ago, something like that, 150 years ago.
Yep.
This little blurb on the side was that like the wife didn't really care for his paintings, but liked him, so would let him come and hang out and paint. But he was like, "Oh, just drink our wine. You're not a very good painter." Kind of shows what everybody knows, I guess, about their taste in art. But
right, I hope she kept some of his paintings if he left any there.
I think there is one like left in the house, but probably not as many as they wish they had.
Right. So the family, like many old world families that have been making wine for a long time, for generations, they have been doing everything environmentally soundly, or like probably basically organically for a long time. And they kind of bristle at when people are like, well, why don't you put it on your label? And they're like, we've just been doing it this way for a long time. We don't need to out it or whatever. But they do give a nod, on their website, that they are environmentally minded, and that they farm traditionally, which is sometimes that term for we've been doing this the right way for a long time, and no need to splash it on our label, kind of thing. So
yeah. And much like I think what all of the wines that Tryon represents are family owned.
Yes. Yeah.
So that already gives you another kind of step in the right direction, if you will, about the fact that the quality in the bottle is going to be very hands-on, because you can literally trace the heritage back. These folks with 13 generations, that's kind of insane to me. And just the fact that there's that much history and that we get to drink is pretty awesome.
They mentioned a couple times specifically that that they are independent and that they make all their choices themselves, that there's no one, there's no shareholders or anyone kind of like holding their feet to the fire. They make their decisions on what they think is best for their lands and to make the best wine. which is how it should be done.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And this like does have you will see some Provence rosés out there that are super, super light. Houchart has always been on the more rich salmon-y kind of side. Doesn't feel like that though. I think people, there's still a misconception of really dark rosés being sweet because of White Zinfandel in the 90s, which thankfully I didn't drink, but it was in the house. So I'm like, I'm familiar enough with it that like that's what I assumed rosé was until it was mid-20s and rosé started to become popular again.
Yeah.
Real rosé, I guess. And just it does have fruit character, which is great. I always pick out grapefruit. It's like ruby red and just nice and juicy and delicious. Even though it's not a flower day or whatever, I still think it smells quite awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a great balance between being dry, but the fruit notes that you get on the nose kind of make it appear to be not sweet, but just a little more fruity. But really, it does end up finishing dry, just a little more round than some of the lighter styles from Provence. But I think it's a really nice balance between the two things, and it's super refreshing.
For sure. And this, honestly, well, being a little richer, you could take it down a couple more degrees, and you aren't going to lose quite as much as you will with those really light rosés that once they're super cold, there's almost not enough body to give you more fruit. It's just acid and cold, which can be refreshing, but this actually will stand up a little bit. And even though it's warmed up in my glass for 25, 30 minutes at this point, it's still like kind of got even more going on once it gets another couple degrees. So
yeah, it's like they know what they're doing.
Yeah, weird. Only took them 13 generations. Just like the previous folks, it only took them 550 years or whatever to figure it out that they got it. That's awesome. One thing that did happen to Provence is Phylloxera, which we've talked about in the past. It's this little aphid that attacks the roots of grapevines. Came from America when they were trying to grow American grapes over in Europe. Most of it's been wiped out. It still does happen. I want to say in Willamette, they're actually having vineyards that are slowly still being taken over. I was talking to the Elk Cove guy a couple weeks back, and they have a vineyard that they will lose to Phylloxera just because it's original. It's like original rootstock, and it's just from Dijon clones or whatever it is, and it's slowly creeping into their Pinot. And it's been 50 years since, 40 years since they've been growing it. So they're kind of like, okay, it's time to change anyway, but it's a slow rolling beast that will just decimate everything. I mean, the European wine industry was literally uprooted because of this tiny little aphid in the 1800s, late 1880s, something like that.
Yeah, that's right.
And basically what it does is if you had aphids on your roses, same kind of thing. It just kind of drains the sap out of the roots, and then the plant can't get any nutrients and won't produce grapes, which without grapes, what's the point of a grapevine? The solution was using heritage American rootstock, which was immune to Phylloxera. There are a few other places in, like, I think Spain and Chile, that the soil is too sandy for the aphid to kind of travel through and to get to the roots. So there's still a little bit of original rootstock left in those countries, but predominantly all of mainland Europe is rootstock. So kind of a crazy thing that happened. Trying to be inventive and bring over some New World vines, and then end up decimating everything. But
yeah, I remember hearing that some of the vines in Chile were saved by the Andes Mountains. It was too cold and tall for the aphids to get over, like bridge the mountains, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
And another cool thing about Provence, where the Phaeacians, Greek folk, landed there, formed Marseille, and then that's where the kind of base of French winemaking started, and then slowly spread out. So went to Rhone, went to Beaujolais, went to Burgundy, it's kind of straight north, and then to the west up into Gascony and Bordeaux. So at the heart of it, even though for a while we would just think of rosés as kind of simple and fleeting, only drink it from April until July 31st, and then switch back to red. We're definitely have evolved. Rosé is a fantastic turkey wine. I mean, I know we're still quite a ways away from Thanksgiving and the holidays and such, but rosé is super food friendly, and even just as an aperitif as you're kind of enjoying, obviously the cheeses, but it can translate into the meal, and those kind of citrusy red fruit kind of flavors in turkey, I think, are really pretty tasty. So
great with seafood as well during the summer, seafood and salads. It's a really nice balance for some of the summer, like the lighter summer foods.
Yeah, it's great. I'm always a fan of this one.
Yeah, I think the 21 is tasting even better than the 20.
Yeah, I agree. And well, 20 wasn't it super delayed too?
Yeah.
Or was that 19? I can't remember. Shipping has been mad for the last couple of years anyway. So I will agree though that this is nice and rich. It has a little more fruit to it than the 20 did, which had much more of that kind of grapefruit, almost pippy kind of style. Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy with this glass of wine, that's for sure.
Yep.
What does everybody think of the rosé? Got some thumbs up. Nice. Like it.
Questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Ed.
Yeah. May we go back to the bubbly?
Sure.
Okay. Two questions on the history of this type of bubbly vis-a-vis champagne. Give me some background in terms of the timing and the areas.
So the monks in Limoux were the first to come up with the secondary fermentation in the bottle, which is called the traditional method, which is the way that they make sparkling in Champagne. But they did that 100 years before anyone did it in Champagne. Does that clarify that a little bit? Do you understand how the traditional method works?
Then if it's basically Malbec wine, so they're taking the skins off the wine or the grapes, obviously, to make this bubbly.
Right. So they put it in the bottle and ferment it once, and then add sugar and a little bit more wine into it, and then recork it to let it go through a secondary fermentation, which in the bottle stays in the bottle, and that's where you get the bubbly, the very effervescent bubbly from. If you just do it once, then you just get like a kind of mild, kind of like very just a little bit of tingle on your tongue, kind of effervescence, and that's the same way that they do it in Champagne. Then you end up taking off the cork and getting rid of the extra yeast, and then recorking before you set it to age. Is that
so? This predated Champagne, then?
Yes, by 100 years.
Yeah, like
but that's in the same general area as the Champagne.
No, so this is down in the south of France.
Okay.
Kind of the southwest area, and Champagne is northeast of Paris.
Okay. But then Champagne obviously got the exclusive rights to say that there's a Champagne worldwide and no one else could do that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely. They made a big deal with a bunch of California wineries that were calling their sparkling California Champagne, and Champagne, the folks there got together and they were mad, and they said that you can't call it that. You need to call it sparkling wine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we all learned that from Wayne's World, that Champagne is from Champagne, France. At least that's where I did, 30 years ago or whatnot. But the biggest difference too, I'd say, with Champagne is also the grapes. The fact that Pinot Noir is kind of replacing the Mauzac in this, and there's no Chenin in Chardonnay or in Champagne. Chardonnay is the only kind of link, I guess you could say, but you know, if anything, champagne typically has a little bit less residual sugar. So it typically is a little drier. And as Thomas was mentioning at the beginning, less of a kind of leesiness to the Blanquette. The lees is referring to the like the yeast cells that ferment the wine, the base wine first, and gives it that kind of bready, brioche kind of flavor. And then the secondary ferment that he was just talking about is where the bubbles come from. So it's really, you know, kind of a special process. And the theory is that, you know, Dom Perignon in 1668 stole the idea. So all of the folks from Limoux hate the Champenois folk, but that's okay. They both make delicious wine. Can't argue with that.
It's important. I mean, I guess it's important to note here that it's kind of a matter of what the climate is giving you. So when you're at the south of France, like, you're going to use different grapes than you would in the cooler climate of Champagne. So, you know, so it's not going to be the same for that reason, because they weren't trying to make things grow there that weren't already growing well. So Chardonnay is the thing that kind of transcends both regions a little bit. But, you know, Pinot Noir is not going to grow in that hot climate, and Pinot Meunier is not either. And also might be a fun fact to note that 2 of the 3 grapes in that make up Champagne are red, and all of the grapes that make up the Limoux are white grapes.
Did that settle your question there, Ed? Did you have a second? No. Okay.
That was good. Thank you.
Great.
Cool.
Polly, did you have any questions about the bubbles? No? Okay, great. If you do, just come find me at the co-op. I am not going to be there for the next couple days, but I will be back full swing on Tuesday of next week. All right, so there's no more questions about the wines tonight. I've got a few other announcements, but we'll be wrapping up today's session of Winesday. So if you do have any questions, let me know in the next couple seconds. Our next Winesday is July 20th, so 2 weeks from today. We're doing something that we've never done on Winesday before, which is not featuring real wine. We're going to be featuring Toast, which is a like adult beverage alternative. So it's a hard tea, but there's no alcohol, and it's flavored with ginger and hibiscus and some other stuff. We've got Mark, who is one of their folks that I talk to when we need to order it. He's going to be joining us, I believe, from greater Boston, Massachusetts area. So kind of exciting to talk about not wine on Winesday. And for the alternative alcohol folk, we will be featuring something that they too can enjoy. So we're going to have some fun new cheese pairings, and it'll still be entertaining as always. We'll have to come up with some bonus material or something like that. If you want to teach
drink wine on the side.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
I think we're going to talk about like how to make a cocktail out of it. So if you want to alcoholify it, then we'll be able to. The other wine event that's going to be happening at the co-op is July 14th. It is a in-person event. So Thursday, 7 p.m. We've got the international sales director from Spire Winery in South Africa. He's going to be joining us. He's in town for the week. And $12, you get 4 half pours of wine, and you can probably revisit because we do that. There's going to be some cheesy hors d'oeuvres. We're waiting till 7, so hopefully it's not super hot outside. We do have the shade sails up at the co-op, but I would still dress slightly lighter than you normally would. And please come, it'll be a lot of fun. You'll be able to ask both me and Ian, the guy from Spire. So how often do you get to talk to somebody from winery that's not on virtual Winesday? So please join that. You get tickets at the co-op the day of. There'll be plenty of wine. There's going to be a little wine, like one-day sale on the wines that we're pouring. So it should be a lot of fun. And then we'll be looking into August. So already here. But if there's no more questions, thank you very much, Thomas, for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Good to see everyone.
And thank you everybody for joining Winesday, and we will see you hopefully on the 14th. If not, we will see you on the 20th. Just throw some vodka or gin in your glass first or something. We'll figure it out. But thank you again, and I will see everybody next time.
Cheers.
Bye.